the other things that sounds a little counterintuitive is that leveraging this technology actually gives us generally higher performance in the gameplay side of things. You know, we're aiming to be a 60 frame per second game for everything, which is always better for gameplay, but historically we've always made the trade of we want to do more sophisticated graphics processing, and we're willing to trade down to a 30 hertz or sometimes less game on that to do whatever we wanted to with graphics. But in many ways, we're definitely at the knee of the curve of a lot of what you could throw extra time at on graphics doesn't really pay for itself in terms of enjoyment on the game there. But with this, you know, nicely and coincidentally on this, the actual rendering pass to go and fetch all of this stuff turns out to be a lot faster than just 3 direct lights done in a sort of conventional way on there, that we can fetch all this pre-generated stuff here, and it actually makes it faster for the game. The trade that we make on all of this is that, unlike Doom 3, where everything was universal and the same and you could move any light around, there is a clear distinction between static and dynamic in Rage. Like the sun does not move around through time of day. You do not go into nighttime on there. And that would, at first, that seems like a really tough decision to kind of give up that flexibility. But one of the things that we learned from Enemy Territory was that they initially had this crazy system that took in, you could specify the day of the year, the time of day, and it put the stars in the right position and atmospheric modeling. And it was a neat toy, but it turned out not to be something that added any benefit to the game. Because one of the things that you'll find is that if you can move the time of day around, there is no area that you can make so good that it doesn't look like crap at some time of day. You know, you put the sun over here or it's dusk on here and all of a sudden everything just looks lousy. And yes, realistically, the sun does rise and set. You need to worry about that, but if you're playing a game, you just want to be running around in some area that looks good, that doesn't wind up hiding information that you need from you at different times of day on there. And our game is not about being a reality simulator on there. And it turns out that you really don't miss it. It's better to have everything look great and be the way the designers want it than to worry about the player wandering into the wrong area at midnight, not being able to see any of the cues the designers laid out for them, and just not having any fun. So there's a whole set of hacks in this engine about the way we approximate things. You know, the shadows from the dynamic characters onto themselves, the way we sample from shadows of the static stuff onto the dynamic characters, and that whole matrix of static, dynamic, they're all back here. But most games have always done that. It was the Doom 3 style of games, of which there have been a few, were really more the exception, where everything is handled universally. And we kind of went up to that point of generality, and now we're back down with game-level hacks for everything. But we got something for it. You know, when we look at the game on here, it looks, I think, fabulous. I'm really happy with what we're getting visually out of this, and how we can use those visuals to really tell the game's story and put the player in a place on that, where you get this kind of gritty frontier town feel in there that you could always approximate in the kind of cartoonish way that the games have always done, but we can really bring that down now to a much more powerful level on this. So it is a set of trades, there's no doubt on here, and the biggest one may be the final crunch of making it all fit onto whatever media that we wind up doing, because we've marshaled everything down a couple times and we think we're kind of close, we're going to be able to crunch it down. We can always turn down the compression ratio on things, we can make it fit, but that's still probably our biggest concern in final stuff, is when we're all done with the game, we've got everything in, how much do we have to kind of lop off to make it fit onto a couple DVDs there? And there's a lot of questions to go into that. And this is sort of a pioneering direction on here. It's not a conventional game sort of content creation and delivery method here. And it does feel sometimes a little lonely going out this path, knowing it's not exactly what all the other people are doing there. But fingers crossed, I think it's looking like a good decision at this point now, and we'll be finding out, hopefully in the not too distant future, how everything winds up in the end to go. But the other side of all of this is that in the entire set of technology, I mean, we've got the entire game process, including design and art, then you've got the whole technology side, then you've got the rendering side, and what always gets talked about here is this megatexture stuff, but that's maybe 10% of the, it's only a few percent of the entire game development process there, maybe 10% of the technology there. All of the other things have to be at this state-of-the-art modern level. I mean, it's got a great animation system, the audio is great, the AI is great, and all of this stuff that's not quite as glamorous to talk about. It doesn't have it's harder to make pictures about all of this stuff to kind of show it off. But the work that we've got there, we've got a great team on systems. We've got a lot of people that are doing spectacular work. There are times now, and even on the core stuff that I do, I feel that we've got enough solid talent on the team here that, like I mentioned earlier, I'm probably stepping away from a good chunk of the graphics now to concentrate on some of the gameplay, tactical player dynamic stuff on there, because we've got people that are perfectly capable of dealing with all of that stuff here. Working on the consoles has been another thing where we've built up the in-house experience on each platform. And it was interesting, we went out, we brought in for a while, like a guy specifically to be PS3 guy on there, and it actually turned out that we're better off bringing up our internal guys to be whatever masters of the technology that we need on there. And we've developed a lot of in-house expertise on that. Again, it's unfortunate that you have to sweat a lot more over the PS3. It's easier to make things happen on the 360. There is, in theory, a little bit more compute power available on the PS3. You just have to work in a different, somewhat more cumbersome way, and tools aren't quite as good, and all this stuff. But it's all workable, and we knew from the beginning that this was our plan, that we're going to ship on 4 platforms here. We're not going to have this finish the game on the PC where you can have the resources that you want and then worry about cutting it down. We keep everything running and up to date continuously. Like some of the internal things, our build system, every time anybody's checking things in, there's a set of systems there that just is continuously grabbing everything, building it. Every day we get a report of here's all the maps in the game, here's how they loaded on all the platforms, here's the frames per second that they're running at, so we can find out, it's like, oh, somebody screwed up something on the PS3, because that's a classic problem of you make one render or change and then the PS3 just locks up for the RSX hang and stuff like that. But a lot of the technology does tend now towards being these things that help the whole team produce better. While I do have the flashy stuff that I want to do sort of in an Intech 6 rendering technology standpoint and where I think we're going with Larrabees and so on in next generation graphics technology, I think a lot of the other production stuff here is going to be stuff that stays with us for quite some time and is evolved rather than torn up and thrown away. We're probably not going to do that clean sheet of paper bit again in the foreseeable future. There's just too much stuff that's just not going to benefit enough from it. In the old days, there were these clear cases where processors were advancing so fast, you have twice as much processing, as much CPU, you want to do things in a different way, and things were so crude in the old days. It was so clear that the difference between what we wanted to do and what we were doing today was large, so there was this strong incentive to every time say, okay, we've got twice the power, let's toss this away and do something that's a whole bunch better. Right now, you can do really great games with what we've got now. The technologies, the code bases that we've got, the hardware that we've got to work on, you can do great stuff. And the benefit of starting from a completely clean sheet of paper now is a lot less. There are large-scale trends that we have to worry about, the moves towards Cs of processors and things like that, but we're evolving towards that rather than just saying, okay, everybody needs to learn a completely new tool chain, completely new way of doing things. Because historically, we suffered a lot from that, where it would be, all right, we're finished with a project, I'm going to write some brand new technology, and it's one thing when you've got a handful of people on there, but when you've got 50 people on a team or 100 people in a company, you can't just say, okay, everybody needs to first hold on while we write a new technology, then write some new tools, and then you learn how to use the tools, and then you start making a game. You just can't afford to do that anymore. So we have to have evolutionary paths where people can have things that they're familiar with. And then if they learn something new, like the stamping technology, it turns out to be incredibly intuitive. It's easy to teach somebody how to use. They still build models and they still build textures just like they were doing at their previous game or previous job on there. We just layer something on top of it and remove the restriction. You don't have a texture budget now. You don't have to make